Welcome to WTF Media. If you love crazy, unbelievable stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out. Let's jump right into today's story. It was 5:35 a.m. and I was sitting in a booth at the village inn. I was sipping coffee and waiting for Rachel to bring me my pancakes with a side of bacon. As I refreshed my cup from the pot on the table, I was thinking about what had me there at that early hour. I was usually in there 3 or 4 times a week, but never that early. In fact, it was the first time I had ever been there when the doors opened at 5:30. I suppose I should have just gone home to bed, but I hadn't because I knew I wouldn't have slept much, and even if I had fallen asleep, only God knows what my dreams might have been like. It was a story that took place 100 times a day, somewhere on the third planet from the sun. The boy goes out of town on a 4-day trip, comes home 2 days early, and finds out that the girl isn't alone. I wondered how many times in those 100 stories that the other man was a family member. I'd called Audrey to let her know I'd be home that evening instead of Saturday, but she didn't answer her phone. My flight got in at 7, and by 8 I was turning into the parking lot at our apartment. As I was straightening out from the turn, I saw Audrey come down the steps and get into a car I recognized. I hit my brakes and stopped before I got close enough for her to notice me and watched as she slid across the seat and kissed the driver. Saying that I was surprised would be an understatement. Audrey had always led me to believe that she couldn't stand my brother. According to her, he was an arrogant asshole who thought his shit didn't stink. So why was she getting into his car and kissing him? Sam pulled away, and I let him get a little bit of a head start, and then I followed along behind him, far enough back that he wouldn't recognize me in his rearview mirror. They pulled into the parking lot at Duke's Steakhouse, parked, kissed, and then got out of the car and walked into the restaurant. I was familiar with Duke's, and I knew that there was no way that I could follow them in and not be noticed, so I found a parking place where I could see Sam's car, and then I settled in to wait. When they came out, they got in the car and necked for about 5 minutes, and then I followed them to the barnyard, which was a country western place with a live band. As with Duke's, I was familiar with the insides of the barn, and I knew there was no place I could sit and not be seen, so once again I parked where I could keep an eye on Sam's car and settled in to wait. They were in there for 2.5 hours, and when they came out, I again followed them. This time it was to the Saddletree Motel. Sam checked in at the front desk, and then Sam and Audrey entered room 107. I gave them 15 minutes to get into what they were, no doubt therefore. Then I went to Sam's car and let the air out of all 4 tires, then went back and sat in my car and waited to see them come out. I wanted to see how Sam handled 4 flats at dark 30. While I waited, I wondered why, since I wasn't expected for another 2 days. They didn't use the bed in the apartment. Then I realized that they couldn't because of Eve. And Sam damned sure couldn't take Aud home with him because Mom and Dad would know since he still lived at home. There was an apartment over the garage, and that is where he lived, and the apartment could be seen from the kitchen window, and Mom or Dad would damned sure recognize Audrey. I also wondered how it had started, and how long it had been going on. I usually made an out-of-town trip every 4 or 5 weeks or so, and I wondered if this is what she did every time I was gone. After a couple of hours, I accepted that they were there for the night, and I gave up my vigil and headed for the apartment. When I saw the village inn sign, I decided to stop for breakfast. I parked and was walking up to the door just as Rachel was unlocking the door. I'd met Audrey in my senior year in college. She was a sophomore, and normally we probably would have never met as we had no shared classes or friends. It was a Friday night fraternity or sorority mixer that brought us together. Besides the members of my fraternity, there were members of other fraternities there. Halfway through the mixer, I was headed for the bathroom, and I had just reached the top of the stairs when I heard "Let go of me." I turned the corner at the top of the stairs and saw a guy pulling a girl toward one of the bedrooms. He wasn't a member of my fraternity, and I didn't know him, but I did know it was my responsibility to see that his actions didn't bring disrepute to our house. So I walked up to him and told him to let the girl go. He turned to me and said, "Butt out, shithead! This ain't none of your fucking business." Where I was raised, no one had taken the time to teach us the Marquis of Queensberry rules. Our rules were hit first, hit hard, get them down, and don't let them get up. The word business was still hanging in the air when I kneed him in the stones, and when he bent at the waist, I gave him a hard elbow to the side of his head, and he went down for the count. I turned to ask the girl if she was okay, but all I saw was the backside of her as she hurried down the stairs. I shrugged and went to the bathroom. When I came out, the guy was sitting there, shaking his head to try and clear it, I suppose. I went downstairs, got a couple of brothers, told them what had happened, and we went up to escort the guy out of the house. Ben recognized him and went and got a couple of his frat brothers to take care of him. I looked around for the girl, but didn't find her, and after a couple of days, I forgot the episode. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a booth at Annie's cafe, having lunch, when a girl walked up and asked me if she could join me. She looked vaguely familiar, so I told her to take a seat. She saw me struggling to place her and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" "You seem familiar to me, but I can't seem to place you," I replied. "The Kappa House mixer? You saved me from that Neanderthal?" "I didn't get a really good look at you, and when I looked for you after it was over, you were gone," I replied. "I should have thanked you, but I was scared, so I ran." Then I got the story. She hadn't really wanted to come to the mixer because she had heard scary stories about what happened at frat parties. Things like date rape drugs being used on unsuspecting girls and gangbangs, but the girls in her sorority had convinced her that nothing like that had ever happened at Kappa. So she went and things were fine until she had to go to the bathroom. The guy caught her coming out of the bathroom, called her a prick tease, and told her he was going to teach her a lesson. Then you showed up and saved me. "So what did you do that made him think you were a prick tease?" I asked. "Nothing. I just tried to be friendly with everyone who was there." Earlier in the evening, the guy hit on me, and I let him know I wasn't interested, but I can't think of anything I might have done that could be construed as teasing. I should have thanked you for coming to my rescue, but at the time, all I could think about was getting the hell out of there and putting as much distance between me and that place as I could. This is the first time I've seen you since then, so I came over to give you my belated thanks. Oh, and by the way, my name is Audrey. Well then, Miss Audrey, I accept your belated thanks, but if you are really thankful, I think you should go out with me, at least once. I'd like that. When? Are you free tonight? I asked. I am. Will 6 work for you? I asked. It will indeed. That date led to many more, and by the time I graduated 3 months later, we were a steady couple. We had started making love after our 10th date. Neither of us was a virgin, so there wasn't any awkwardness. We seemed to be very good together. I found out that Audrey had a kinky side to her. She liked to make love in places where there was some risk of being seen. It excited her, and her being excited excited me. We were never caught, but a couple of times we almost were. She met my family, for the first time, at the graduation party that my parents held for me. Mom and Dad took to her right away, and my brother Sam couldn't seem to take his eyes off of her. I thought nothing of it at the time. Audrey was a beautiful woman, and I was used to males watching her and wishing that she was theirs. Before I left to take Audrey home, my sister took me aside and said, You lucked out here, bro. Don't let this one get away. That night, when I took Aud back to the sorority house, I proposed and she said yes, but not until I graduate lover. Once I have my degree, I'll walk down the aisle to you. I thought that was reasonable, even if I didn't want to wait that long. I hadn't found a job yet, so I went with Aud when she went home for the summer and spent a week with her family. I liked her parents and her younger sister, and they seemed to like me. At the end of the visit, I went home to begin my job search. Aud would be staying with her folks until the end of summer vacation, so I would pretty much be able to devote my full concentration to my job search. Luck was with me, and I landed a good job a week after starting my job search. Along with the new job, I made a change in my lifestyle. It was time for me to cut the apron strings, so to speak. I'd been living at home, and now that I was out of school and had a job, it was time for me to find my own place. My graduation gift from my parents was a check for $10,000, and I used some of it to put down the first and last month's rent and the security deposit. I used some of the rest to furnish the place. I talked with Audrey almost every night, and while I told her about the new job, I kept mum about the apartment, intending to surprise her with it when she came back to school. Audrey came back to school 3 days before school started. I picked her up at the airport and headed for the apartment. When I parked in the parking lot, she asked, "Why are you stopping here?" "I thought that since we haven't made love in over a month, you might want to try out my new bed," I replied. "Your new bed?" "Yep, I live here now," I replied. Once inside, I walked her through the place, leaving the bedroom for last. Once in the bedroom, I casually mentioned that there was enough room in the closet for her stuff and that the dresser still had 3 empty drawers. "Of course, if you would rather live in the sorority house than here with me, I'm sure I can fill them up with something," I said. "When can I move in?" "Well, I guess we could leave now and go get your stuff instead of making love now and then going to get your stuff," I replied. Oh, damn. Decisions, decisions, decisions. What the hell, I guess. Since we are already here, we might as well get the lovemaking out of the way first, she replied. She must have been as horny as I was, because she damn near fucked me to death. After several times, we snuggled up to each other and went to sleep. The next day, Audrey drove me to work and kept my car to move her things from the sorority house to the apartment. We stopped and had dinner after she picked me up from work, and then we went back to the apartment and she did her best to reduce me to ruin. The next year rolled by as we adjusted to each other's almost full-time presence. As in all new full-time partnerships, there were glitches along the way. Audrey was still a full-time student, and class schedules, projects, and study groups had to be worked around, and she still belonged to her sorority and had to attend their events. On my side, I had to occasionally work late, work on Saturdays, and take the occasional business trip out of town. But we managed, and it gave us a very good idea of how life was going to be when we got married. Audrey still insisted that marriage wasn't going to happen until she graduated. I didn't care because as far as I was concerned, we were already married and just hadn't gotten around to doing the paperwork. I had some vacation time earned, so when the summer break came, I was able to go home with Aud for a week, and then I needed to get back to work. I spent a pretty miserable 5 weeks alone. We did talk on the phone 2 or 3 times a week, and a hell of a lot of I love you, and I miss you were exchanged. When Aud did get back, 2 weeks before classes were due to start, the majority of our time was spent in the bedroom, trying to play catch up. On one of those nights, as I laid next to her, damned near ruined by what she had just put me through, and as her hand worked at trying to get me up, for one more time, she said, "I need a favor. I need a really big favor. After what you just did to me, I don't think I can refuse you anything. What is it?" Eve will be flying in on Saturday. She will be starting her freshman year. Would you mind if she stayed here with us until she can get her feet on the ground?" I liked Eve, and since the spare bedroom wasn't being used, I saw no reason not to let Eve use it. "No problem, sweetie, but you might have to stick a rag in your mouth when we make love. You can be a bit noisy, you know, and we wouldn't want to disturb Eve's sleep." "I'm not that noisy," she replied. "Oh yes, you are, and since your ministrations have had the desired results, I will now proceed to prove it," and I did. We picked Eve up at the airport and got her settled in. There were some changes made to the way Aud and I had been living. Adjustments were necessary to accommodate Eve's being with us, but we soon had things on an even keel. Eve was a very good-looking young lady, and it wasn't long before she started dating, and her being out on dates gave Aud and me plenty of alone time, enough to ensure that our sex life didn't suffer. And then came the trip that let me come home 2 days early. I stalled over my breakfast. I needed to go home, shower, and get ready to go to work, but I wanted to give Eve enough time to leave for class. If she was still there when I got there, my natural question for her would of course be, "Where is Audrey?" which would drag her into things. But then she was more than likely already in the middle of it. She knows I'm supposed to be gone, and she knows Audrey didn't come home last night, and I'm sure that she is smart enough to put 2 and 2 together and come up with the correct answer. But then again, maybe Audrey had given Eve a perfectly good excuse, but it didn't matter what story Audrey had told Eve, because I knew the true story. Among the thoughts I'd had while eating my breakfast was, what was I going to do now? It was a given that Audrey was history, but what were to be the mechanics of it? Confrontation, or just bag up her stuff, put it outside, and not bother talking to her? Then, of course, there was my brother. What was I to do there? That question was a lot harder to answer, because whatever I did with him would inevitably bring my parents into things. They would almost certainly want to know why my relationship with Sam had changed. They would want to know why I wouldn't attend any family functions if Sam was going to be there, and I would have to tell them. I wouldn't lie to them, so they would get the cold, hard truth. I hadn't stalled long enough, and Eve was still there when I got home. I'd heard the expression "her face turned pale," but I'd always thought that it was a figure of speech until I walked in and Eve saw me. Her face did indeed lose its color, and that told me that she knew what Eve was doing. What she didn't know was that I already knew what was going on, so my "how long has she been doing it" caught her completely by surprise. She had expected "where is Aud?" and was probably already trying to think of a good answer to that question. By my question told her that no lie was going to work, and I could see from her face that she realized it, but I wasn't ready for her answer. As far as I know, she never stopped. She never stopped? What does that mean? She had steady boyfriends all through high school, and she cheated on every one of them. When you came home with her for the summer, she behaved herself, but as soon as you left, she was going out with guys she knew from high school. I don't know that much about here. I do know that every time you've gone on a trip, she goes out with somebody. Sometimes she comes home at night, but usually she isn't home by the time I leave for school. I was about to say something like I thought you liked me enough to let me know what was going on, but I quickly realized how stupid the question would be. She and Audrey were family, and the old saying that blood is thicker than water would hold true in this case. I suppose now that you know you are going to kick her out. You suppose right, I replied. What's my time frame? She answered. Your time frame? I replied. How long before I have to be out? How much time do I have to find a place to stay? Take as much time as you want. I'm kicking your sister out, not you. I know it might make your relationship with her a bit awkward, with you being here after she is gone, but I see no reason for punishing you for what she has done. How you handle Aud is up to you, but she won't be here when you get home from class. I'm going to bag up all of her stuff and put it outside so she will see it when she finally does come home." I went into the kitchen to get some garbage bags, and when I came out, Eve had left for class. It only took me an hour to remove all presence of Audrey from the apartment. Knowing that Audrey's first class of the day wasn't until 10:15, and that I hadn't called in to work to let them know I was back 2 days early, and assuming that she would come home before going to class, I settled in to wait for her to show up. She arrived at 9:40 and was surprised to see me. She came over to me and bent down to kiss me, and then said, "When did you get home?" "Last night," I replied. "Why didn't you call me?" she asked. "I did, but you never answered," I replied. "Oh shit. I turned it off so we wouldn't be bothered while we studied," she replied. "While we studied? Who is we?" I asked. "Some of the girls in my managerial economics class. It was a kind of study sleepover thing," she answered. The lie rolled easily off her tongue, and if I hadn't seen what she had done with my own eyes, I probably would have believed her. And then she asked, "What's with all the garbage bags outside the door?" "It is all of your stuff," I replied. "My stuff?" she asked. "Yes, Audrey, your stuff. I'm kicking you out of the apartment and out of my life." "You're not serious. You can't be. We love each other," she answered. "I can't speak for your lying ass, but my love for you died last night while I watched you and my asshole brother walk into room 107 at the Saddle Tree. I got home just in time to see you climb into Sam's car and then kiss the guy you told me you just could not stand because he was an arrogant asshole. After seeing that, I just had to follow along to see what was going on." She was quiet and contemplated me for several seconds and then said the flat tires. "That was you?" I just nodded my head, yes. "I guess I'd be wasting my breath if I told you that you are the only one that I love, and that Sam was just sex." "You would be right about that. I don't give a shit about the why of it. The only thing that matters is that you did it. I'm just glad I found out about you before I married you." When I said that, her whole demeanor changed. She sneered at me and said, "We were never going to get married. You were just something to help me make it through school. A steady and dependable source of sex to help me get through. You don't make enough money or have a big enough banana for me to tie myself to you permanently." And with that, she turned and headed for the door. When she got to the door, she turned back to me, gave me the finger, said "fuck you." As the door closed behind her, I muttered "fucking cunt. No good bitch." Hey, I was a guy, and if you really want to upset a guy, tell him his banana isn't up to the job. Then I remembered how she had acted whenever we had sex and realized that she was lying to me when she said my banana wasn't big enough for her. She was either lying or the silver screen and the Broadway stage were being deprived of one of the greatest actresses to ever come along. Then I smiled as I realized that my banana satisfied the one it was meant to, me. I took a shower and then caught a couple of hours of sleep before getting up and going in to work to turn in the paperwork on my trip. Then I went home, and when I got there, I saw that all of Audrey's stuff was gone. I made a meal out of leftovers in the fridge, and then decided to get the next distasteful chore on my list over with. I headed for my parents' place, planning on paying my brother's garage apartment a visit and letting him know just how displeased I was with him. I walked up to the door and knocked. A minute or so later, Sam opened the door, and Sam, seeing it was me, smiled and told me to come on in. The smile told me that Audrey hadn't called him to let him know that they had been busted. As a result, the smile was still on Sam's face when my right hand hit him on the jaw. He staggered back, and I followed up with a kick to his stones. He went to the floor, and I kicked him a couple more times, and then I looked down at him and said, In case you haven't figured it out, I know about you and Audrey. This is just a sample of what I'll do to you whenever you get near me from now on. I'll leave it up to you to explain to Mom and Dad why I never come to any family functions when you will be there." I turned and left the apartment, leaving Sam lying on the floor, gasping for breath. When I got home, Eve was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. She looked up when I came in and said, "You did it. You really did it. You threw her out." "Did I not sound serious when I told you that I was going to?" I replied. "I knew you were upset, but I figured since you loved each other, you would somehow work things out." "Not in this lifetime, sweetie," I replied. She called me. She wanted to know where I was going to stay when you put me out. She couldn't believe that you were going to let me stay. I shrugged and said, "It has been a long, hard day, and I'm going to shower and put myself to bed," and I left her to her homework, and it had been a long, hard day. From the time I found out what was going on until I climbed into the shower, it had only been a little over 24 hours. You would have thought that after the day I'd been through, I would have had trouble sleeping, but I slept like a log. In the morning, I woke up to a surprise. I walked into the kitchen and found Sam there drinking coffee with Eve. "What the fuck are you doing here?" I snarled at him. "We have to talk, bro," he replied. "Why would I want to talk to a lowlife like you?" "I need to tell you what was going on," he replied. "And you think it would matter? You were stag me in the back, you fucking asshole?" "You don't understand. I had to do it," he answered. "You had to do it. This I've got to hear." Eve stood up and said, "I'll leave you two to go at it. I've got a class to get to," and she left. Once she was out the door, Sam said, "Audrey was making me do it," he muttered. "Oh, for Christ's sake, Sam. You expect me to believe hogwash like that?" "It's true. She caught me doing something that I needed to keep hidden, and she threatened to expose me to Mom and Dad, unless I did what she wanted," he answered. "What would that be? Fucking little boys," I replied. "Close, but no, not that," he answered. "Close?" I asked. "She caught me necking with a guy. I'm bisexual, bro. I go both ways." "I'm not the only one she was cheating on you with. It happened on your trip to Baltimore. I was at a party given by a couple I knew who were both bi and who swing. It was a party for like-minded people, and I was there getting it on with a guy I know when she walked in with another guy I know who goes both ways. She pretended that she didn't know me and we avoided each other for the night, but it was impossible to ignore what she was doing. Half an hour into the party, she was pulling a train. Every guy there, except me, nailed her at least twice, and several went 3 times. The next day, she called me and told me that we needed to talk. We met at Bud's bar, and she laid it out for me. I'd do what she wanted, and when she wanted, or she would out me to Mom and Dad. I couldn't let that happen. Mom would probably accept it, even if she wouldn't be happy about it, but you know Dad and what he thinks about anyone who isn't 100% hetero. No way on God's earth could I ever let him find out. The woman was one sick bitch, bro. She got off on being able to control me. She didn't like me, but she got off on being able to push me into doing whatever she wanted. You have no idea of how many hours I've spent trying to come up with a way to let you know about what kind of bitch she was without exposing myself. As it is, I'm waiting for her to tell Mom and Dad, just out of pure vindictiveness. At least you are rid of her. Audrey never did call my parents, and Sam and I managed to heal our relationship. Eve lived with me for another 7 months, even though Audrey kept trying to get her to join the sorority and live at the sorority house, but Eve wanted no part of the Greek scene. She eventually hooked up with a guy and moved in with him, but we remained good friends. I lost track of Audrey after I booted her out, and a couple of times. Eve tried to tell me about what Audrey was up to, but I quickly shut her down, and she soon got the message that I didn't want to hear even one word about anything concerning her sister. Well, that is not totally true. She did fill me in on one thing that Audrey was going to do, and I'm glad that she did. I managed to get in without anyone there recognizing me, and I sat in the back. It was my big chance to get back at Audrey, and I almost peed my pants waiting to be able to do it. I was looking at the guy standing there, and I guessed that he must have the money and banana size that Audrey required. I was actually quivering in anticipation when the moment came. If there is anyone present who knows why these two people should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now, or forever hold their peace. I stood up and said, I do. The bitch is a cheating slut. While she was engaged to me, she cheated on me with my own brother, and when I was out of town on business, she was pulling trains and being gangbanged by the members of a swingers group. I turned and faced the prospective groom and addressed him personally. If that's the kind of woman you want, that's up to you. Just be aware of the axiom that once a cheater, always a cheater. Then, taking advantage of the stunned silence, I walked out of the church with my head held high and a big smile on my face. That's the end of this story. If you found it engaging, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. I've tried out a new style, so if you liked it, let me know in the comments. Your support and feedback mean the world to me. Thanks for watching.